The General Industries Workers Union of South Africa is calling for unity across sectors and borders in the spirit of May Day. The day is celebrated by workers across the globe as International Workers' Day, South Africa, and falls on the 1st of May. May Day is a historic reminder of the struggles and achievements of workers who have fought for their rights and dignity in the face of capitalist exploitation and oppression. For more, we're joined by the President of the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, Mametlwe Sebei. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. And one would say that it is an unfortunate time to be reflecting on the rights of workers, not just in South Africa, but across the world, given the vast injustices that they face at the moment, whether it be the issue of fighting for salary increases, for fair treatment in the workplace, and many other injustices. Just give us a sense of what you see in the current landscape and what exactly is there to celebrate as a worker in South Africa.
Thank you very much. We are saying that is a commemoration, but also we are saying that it's basically a worldwide gender struggle of the workers against injustices, against, for workers' rights, and of course, for a better, progressive, and for us, for a socialist society in which working class will not have to face oppressions, and of course, exploitation that is a daily toil under capitalism. Now, we are celebrating what has been achieved. And I think, people look at what we call a civilized world today and do not appreciate the fact that all of this are conquests for which the working class people made tremendous sacrifices. The fact that after this shift, after an 8-hour shift, you can go home to rest, you have a weekend, you have maternity leave, you have pension fund today, you have, public education, you have public health, you have, every of the things that today we take for granted. All of this are the achievements for which working class people fought, working class people died. And I think this day reminds us that when we are united, when we are organized, when we fight, we can be able to achieve a lot. And of course, it's a day in which we've got to set ourselves new goals to say, what are the challenges today and how do we confront the challenges? We are faced with the challenges of the cost of living crisis, of rise of right-wing populism. We are living in a world of turmoil, of wars, of inter-imperialist conflicts. And all of that, we are facing a threat of nuclear conflicts on a worldwide scale today. All of these are challenges that the working class can overcome when we unite, when we fight together.
That right-wing populism that you mentioned and the rising cost of living, which is unattainable for many South Africans, do you think that government and related stakeholders have been doing enough to cushion the dire impact of the global developments and the impact that they've had on South Africa?
Absolutely not. If anything, what they have done is that they have, offloaded the burden of the global economic crisis of capitalism on the shoulders of the working class. From the interest rate policy of this government that has, increased the cost of living itself, of course, under pretext of fighting inflation, allowing big corporations that have monopolized key sectors of the economy to increase prices, to swindle working class people. This has taken place under the watch of government. Competition Commission itself this year released, a report titled Essential, Food Price Formation report. And I think that report points out that the price of meat, the price of sunflower oil, and other basic commodities were increased unjustifiably and unreasonably. Yet this government not only has not done anything, but it has continued with austerity programs that has seen it firstly wrecking a collective agreement in a bargaining council, in a public bargaining council, but also not offering workers in that council. And I'm talking about nurses, I'm talking about teachers, I'm talking about hard-working public servants that are responsible for the essential public services that are being sabotaged, that are being underfunded by this government, right? They are not getting increases. And why? Part of the reason is that government want to set a benchmark. It want to provide leadership to the capitalist class in lowering what they consider to be a problem, which is the cost of production, and in that is lowering the cost of labor, which is wages. And that is a problem. And it's also the reason that they have not been spending on ensuring that public education is funded, on ensuring that public health care is uplifted. Most of the hospitals and clinics in our working class communities are collapsing. And what happens? These politicians blame migrants. They say that the public health care that is looted, that is plundered, is because there are many patients from Zimbabwe and others, and they're going to be anything far from the truth. I mean, I'm in Khanjabele in Limpopo, where there is barely a significant number of migrants. Yes, the hospital here is not even working. And you go to, public education facilities. The school where I went, the conditions are appalling, to say the least. Right? It resembles what has been there under apartheid and all these things and so on. This government did absolutely nothing to change that, and to ensure that we have public roads, we have all of these things. So they have offloaded the burden of the economic crisis on the shoulders of the working class. They are blaming on working class people, and we say that the working class people must refuse this, must reject this populism. They must unite, they must fight back. But I must also mention that we have, as Yusa said, we are going to dedicate solidarity with the people of Palestine that are facing repression from, Israeli imperialism. We are also dedicating this commemoration to 1973 Durban strike that laid a foundation for a modern labor movement that saw a mass strike of workers challenging an apartheid regime, and with it, the system of a cheap black migrant labor. We celebrate this. And again, we're saying all of these remind us that the working class united will never be defeated.
Yes, and of course, as you mentioned, issues around the conditions in which workers are forced to work, the contenders in which they deal with, as well as the current economic climate. Another part of the conversation, which is equally important, is the national minimum wage, and that has received quite a significant spotlight for the working class over the last few years. And your thoughts on the current national minimum wage that has been agreed upon. We do know encouragingly it now includes domestic workers, but many would argue that it's still too little for people to survive on in its current form.
Yes, think about it. We live in a country where, 75% of the workers are earning below 5,800. In the most advanced, industrialized country of capitalism in this continent. That is a criminal scandal. That is a criminal, policy that is being pursued by the ANC. That is, see, a massive shift of wealth from the working class people who continue to be exploited. By every measure, the rate of exploitation has intensified since the ANC took power. In 1994, when they took power, for every R1 that was spent on wages, the employer was getting something like 87 cents. Under this government, the employer are getting over R1 for every rand that they spend on wages. In spite of that, right? In spite of that intensive rate of exploitation that have seen the living standards of the workers plummeting and collapsing, that have seen the poverty within the working class increasing, that have seen, even those that are employed, right, struggling just to commute to and from work. In spite of all of that, what we see rising levels of unemployment. We see all of these things that they said, if only we accept poor wages, will not be happening. But the poverty, the unemployment, lack of basic services is continuing, and if anything, is worsening. And I think it's testament that the problem in this situation is not a working class. The problem in this situation is a capitalist class and their neoliberal austerity program. And this is the reason that what we must set ourselves as a goal during this May Day celebration is, of course, to say the working class is under siege, the working class is facing a cost of living crisis, the working class is facing an appalling levels of unemployment. Over 11 million people in this country are unemployed, and that includes over 75% of young people, many of whom are not in education, not in any form of employment, not in any form of training. And they are idling the street, and their lives are being wasted by this crisis, by this government, and by this system. And we should be able to draw the line somewhere, because it is either that or the barbarism of the increasing levels of violent crimes that we've seen, massive shooting, gender-based violence, that speak to a decay in the very foundation of society. and of course, the tearing apart of the fabric of society itself under this system. And what is it in communities, amongst the youth, on the industrial plane, and uniting all of this to ensure that we take this government out. We, of course, turn the situation around on the basis that the working class must also seize economic power through a nationalization of the banks, of the mines, of the factories, of the commodity heights of the economy, so that we can put them under public ownership. And on the basis of democratic management and control of the working class, we can make sure that the wealth in the economy is put to the use and in the service of the people, not a few that profit from the big corporations that they own at the moment.
Mametlwe, your connection is struggling to keep strong, but I'm going to try you with one more question here, because you speak about capitalism and how it has impacted the working class. What about those who argue and reference examples that the free market way of doing things, which is how South Africa operates, is the best way, and not necessarily socialism or communism, as we've seen in other parts of the world, having an adverse impact on populations? What would your response to that argument be there? And what would the alternative be if the ANC is out of power, we get rid of the free market principles of operation? What would that alternative look like for Giwusa to benefit the working class the most?
Firstly, I mean, that my connection is terrible is because of these rolling blackouts, and which in rural areas are compounded by the load reduction, a very racist policy that ESCOM uses to target black working class communities on the basis of low levels of payments in those communities to punish everybody who lives, whether they pay or not. That's part of the problem, and I think this interview is a testament to that. Secondly, I mean, the idea that these rolling blackouts, the idea that the water outages, the idea that, 11.26 million unemployed in this country, over half of the population living in poverty, having levels of violence, which in the past, in the 3 months of 2020, the last 3 months of 2022, have seen 775 people, 7,755 people being killed in that month, which translates into 85 people being murdered in this country on a daily basis. The levels of gender-based violence that have seen, about 153 people being raped on a daily basis. All of that are elements of barbarism. And to say that capitalism is a success on that basis is to actually lack faith in humanity and what human race is capable of achieving. The reality is, today we have a productive capacity, the industrial capacity, the wealth in the economy, both in this country and across the world, to overcome the crisis of unemployment and other things. Of course, the question of what is the alternative for us is socialism, right? And the question of socialism is what happened at Soviet Union. If you look at Soviet Union, it was never a socialist country and so on, but just on the basis of workers taking power, on the basis of public ownership and the planning of the economy, Soviet Union developed from a most backward country in Europe to a superpower second only to the US. And without the slavery, without everything that came with a development of capitalism in Western imperialist countries like Britain, France, Portugal, US and all of that, right? That was on the basis just of the planning of the economy. In the areas of sciences, in the areas of engineering, in the areas of metal industries and so on, it has actually superseded US, and it raised the productivity of labor, something that is a problem in this country because of poor investment in transport, in education and others. The level of productivity is low. As a result, the level of return on investment is low, and that's the reason that the capitalists are not investing. And what is ANC offering? ANC is not only not investing, in fact, the public corporations are insolvent.
Yeah.
That's the reason 83% of there was a decline of 83% in public investment last year, and we are set for a 4.3 trillion backlog in public infrastructure, which will make the current situation, the current nightmares of blackouts, of water outages, look like a paradise in 10 years from now.
Thank you very much for those insights. And of course, you will be commemorating May Day, joining SAFTU demonstrations across the country. And you yourself, you say you are in Limpopo and will be addressing workers there. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That is Mametlwe Sebei of the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, or Giwusa.